What's good, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Redwater Podcast. As always, I'm Yasar.
And I'm Kimo.
And today we're talking about the 2023 Austrian Grand Prix. So just starting off overall, I thought this was a fantastic weekend. It was a sprint weekend, so we got a sprint race with the new format. And I just thought overall, just all the racing we were seeing this weekend was fantastic. Honestly, qualifying was pretty entertaining too. But yeah, so I guess we can start to get into it. I guess start with the beginning of the weekend with quali.
I want to say that first off, I mean, it was kind of a mix of like it being Austria, but also it being a sprint weekend. That this sprint specifically was a lot of fun. I think one of the biggest things was definitely the weather. I wish it was a wet race, but having it be a wet Saturday made the sprint more fun, in my opinion. Not just the sprint, but the sprint qualifying. But let's start with Friday. So Friday was a big deal because you only had one practice, and it means practice is actually kind of entertaining.
Yeah.
Because you get a whole bunch of different, like a whole bunch of different testing programs, a whole bunch of different, programs for the teams, like different goals is what I'm trying to say. So McLaren comes in with big upgrades. Their whole thing with Lando's car was like, we need to figure out these things in 2 hours or, we have qualifying like real soon, right? So it was fun to watch him, and he actually didn't have a good practice. He had to come in multiple times, and it was probably because their setup was all wrong. If you have upgrades, it's very hard to know then, and like from the previous year, there's no way that setup would have been the right setup for Lando's car with all these changes. Let's actually pull up those upgrades really quick and talk about them. So, yeah, we didn't do a preview. Sorry about that. But all you really need to know is that the McLaren upgrades were pretty extensive, and it's like one half of the whole thing. There's going to be a quarter more in Silverstone, a quarter more coming in Hungary. So this is a big package, and I think this is really the package that they developed over the winter too late. If you guys remember the rumors or the stuff we talked about during the off season, where basically they ran out of time. They found out the right call or the right,
but they just couldn't implement it yet.
And I think honestly, like, it sucks for their beginning of the season. And I'm not saying this is better than what should have happened, but I think at least now what probably happened too is they were able to refine it a little better and play off of teams like what Aston Martin have done, what Alpine have done, and it's probably more refined than
what it would have been if they did actually get it out in time at the start of the season. Yeah, I see that.
But I still think overall it would have been better if they had that package. Right. At least something closer to this in the beginning of the season. Whatever the case is, if you guys get a chance, go on Instagram or Google something and like look up the visuals, and I'll put up some in between us here of just the big pieces, and the big pieces that are visual, because we can't see the floor. They upgraded the floor.
Yeah.
But the side pods are probably the biggest striking feature. So they had before what I would consider the closest thing to a Red Bull copy before.
That's the part on the bottom right here.
So right here you have like that little bump and crest we talked about last episode. We had to have that kind of leak over the side that Red Bull really likes, and they had a pretty flat top. Like they had a small tub that was like, it was very, very shallow, whereas Red Bull has just completely flat. But now they've embraced the tub, and it's very similar to the Aston Martins. You can't see it in this photo, but I'll put one up, and it's essentially this same gradual slide. I think it's slightly shallower and less intense than the Aston Martins.
I think so too.
And
from what I've seen.
Yeah, there's a really cool guy called Buchanan Motorsport on YouTube, and he used to be an aerodynamicist for like Racing Point and Force India. And so he has some really good points, and one of the things he talked about was for the McLaren upgrade, it is slightly better than the Aston Martins because there are some small bits of the waterfall design that McLaren did better than Aston Martin, at least in this guy's eyes. And he's not biased. I mean, he used to work for Aston Martin, so I take his word for it. But overall, all you really need to know is this is going to improve the aero efficiency of McLaren, and clearly it did.
No, yeah, we saw that this weekend.
And so it's kind of a tough call, the overall performance, because not only was it a really short practice, so we don't know if it really was optimized. It usually takes a couple races for them to optimize the setup when they've introduced a new upgrade or something. And it was dynamic weather. So we have no fucking idea. I mean, during the race, it was probably a good indication, but not during the sprint or anything. And Norris is also incredibly good at Austria. So I don't know if that's a baseline, right?
Mm.
I think he got the most out of it from what he could.
Yeah, I just think because I remember seeing an interview where he was talking about kind of his performance. This was after the sprint race, I believe, where he was saying that this track just really suits his driving style. He said literally just what he's noticed over the years from driving behind people is that in very high speed corners and then also very heavy braking zones is where he feels he's always been stronger than other drivers. And he straight up said that he felt that this track was pretty much just 3 heavy braking zones and then a bunch of high-speed corners, and that's part of why he thinks he did as well as he did. But then for sure part of that is the new upgrades they got and him being able to just maximize the performance from them.
Yeah, I'm sure the upgrades allowed him to keep up on the straights and through those high-speed corners. I don't know if it made more downforce for him, but it certainly looked like he had better straight line speed. That was able to at least kind of keep up. Maybe is kind of strong phrase.
Well, yeah, they're not fighting the Red Bulls, but I think he's for sure able to keep up. And actually, they were faster.
They were better than the Alpines for sure.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say they were faster than Mercedes this weekend. But I thought so. Mercedes, like both Mercedes driver, really weren't feeling the car they had this weekend. But yeah, for sure, that McLaren had faster race pace than they did. And I'd probably say this race they were around, I guess, where the Aston Martins were.
Yeah. I would say that's pretty accurate. Alonso didn't have his best race. He was kind of nowhere, but he was at least ahead of the Alpines, right? He was just kind of in his own world for the entire race. I didn't hear anything about him, really. He did better than Stroll. We'll get to the race in a second, but let's start with the qualifying then, Friday.
Yeah, so main thing from qualifying, and so if you guys don't remember also, they have a new format with the sprints than they did last year. We talked about it in a lot of detail during the Baku episode, but just kind of a quick rundown. So they have normal quali on Friday. That sets the grid for the race on Sunday. And then on Saturday, they have another qualifying session that's just for the grid for the sprint race that follows right after. And so quali on Friday, really the main thing there, and kind of the theme really the whole weekend was track limits. So you had Sergio Perez in Q1. Max too. So Max initially set out a lap. He got pole, and then the lap got deleted because of track limits. And so eventually by the end of the session, he was able to put in a lap. I think he still got pole with that lap, didn't he?
Yes.
Like at least out of Q1, yeah. But Perez unfortunately wasn't able to. So Perez was gonna start the race. I think it was
15th.
Yeah, 15th.
His track time got deleted.
He would have had a lap that would have been good enough for Q2, but he couldn't keep it within the lines.
I mean, for P2. he was right behind Verstappen within a tenth. Yeah. Regardless, basically, like, during qualifying, the Red Bulls were really great. And even though Perez fucked up on track limits, which it was entirely his fault. I'm a Perez fan, but it was entirely his fault. His race engineer told him specifically where he was breaking the track limits, and he did it again the next lap. Yeah. It's about as close to a driver.
And it's because where he literally doesn't have an excuse is Max got a lap deleted too, and then even Max complained. He was like, "Oh, this is kind of bullshit," but Max still went out, set another lap that was within the lines, and like got him provisional pole. So Perez, you have no excuse to not be able to do the same.
You have a right to complain as long as you can make up for it. That's the key.
Yeah.
But I will say that, going back to the McLaren, he was the only one that I remember being within a tenth during Q2. Like, I think the Ferraris were saving their tires for Q3, and that's why, they ended up being P2 and 3, I think, is because they had an extra set of soft tires. But honestly, the McLarens, the McLaren of Norris specifically, was right there. Piastri didn't get the upgrades, by the way, if you're wondering why there was such a disparity between the two. Only Norris got the upgrades. But yeah, I think really qualifying was a showdown between... Max was on his own, but the Ferraris and Norris, I think, were the only ones that were anywhere close.
The Mercedes, at least, qualifying on Friday, they just didn't have as much pace as they were having, say, Spain. Same with the Aston Martins. The Alpines were kind of... Actually, didn't Albon, Hulkenberg had an amazing quality.
He did. He got in Q3, I think.
Yeah. And then... So Albon, Hulkenberg. There was one other person I remember making it into Q3 who normally didn't make it. I won't say it was Bottas. I don't remember for sure.
Joe, was it? No,
it definitely wasn't Joe.
I can't remember.
Joe. Yeah, but that was also because there was a couple other drivers. I don't remember specifically who also got lap times deleted. But so that was qualifying on Friday, and then qualifying on Saturday for the sprint race. So that one, the track was wet, but there was still a dry line. So all of the drivers still set times, like on dry tires. However, because the track was wet, like basically the stewards said there wasn't any restriction on the tires they have to use. So instead of, having to use the hard tires for Q1, they had completely free reign. So everyone could just use whatever they needed to. But yeah, that was the main thing there. There wasn't as much drama with track limits during that quality, as at least not that I remember.
No, I mean, well, the Paris one was probably the biggest one because of it's a Red Bull. I think that was probably the biggest like hubbub about it.
Yeah. And then Hamilton didn't make it out of Q1, and then Russell didn't make it out of Q2, but that wasn't his fault. That was because of mechanical issues. I don't know what was up with Hamilton. Hamilton was just struggling with the car all weekend, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, during the race, he vocalized that it was specifically the brakes that were giving him trouble, but I'm sure it's just in general the car. I think the car has struggled with high-speed corners and heavy braking, which is why they talked about, like, I remember going into Montreal.
High-speed corners and heavy braking, that's the whole track.
Yeah, but
at least according to Norris.
But here's the thing, though, is, like, Montreal, like, really is that. Like, Austria has...
Well, I don't think it's an issue with the car, like, fundamentally. I think it might just be the setup that they had for the car this track.
Yeah, it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
And sorry, I want to retract, sorry. That was confusing. Montreal isn't like Austria. It's my point is that like Montreal also has heavy braking zones, but Hamilton seemed to be fine in Montreal.
Yeah.
So you're right.
No, I genuinely think it could be because, only having one practice session, they didn't have as much time to really dial in the setup to what he wanted to. So I think that's mainly what it was, and that's why they were kind of lacking pace the whole weekend.
I want to mention that there's the other thing I think it might be is we didn't get a chance to do the preview, but Austria is actually the second highest elevation track on the calendar behind Mexico. And that does put a strain on not only the powertrain, the engine, but it makes it harder to generate downforce because if the air is thinner, there's less air going over the wing, and so we kind of know already that the Mercedes is not very aero efficient. It's downforce to drag ratio. Even they've changed their sidepod design, so it's a lot better, but they've had trouble controlling that tire wake, and it creates a lot of drag. And I think. They may have had less drag this weekend because of the lighter air, but then they couldn't generate any downforce. So that could possibly be the reason why Hamilton was struggling under braking, but that's just speculatory. Yeah. What I did want to say, though, is that I like the fact that it's only one practice session and that you get mistakes like that.
I know. I think when we first talked about the new format in Baku, I definitely was more I don't like the fact that it's just one practice session. I feel like that's too little. Like, I think they need to either have another full practice session or maybe extend the time of this one practice session that they do have.
Right.
Like, I could see the appeal because, you think there's a chance of more variability, which is true, but I think it's just more fair to the teams to really give them more time to try to, like, get an optimal setup.
Can we compromise on our opinions here and say that 2 is good?
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah, I'm okay with not being a full 3, but I would like to see 2 practice sessions.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I mean, I guess the sprint format they had last year was good in that regard because they would give a practice session in the morning of Saturday. Yeah.
Well, but then that second one was low-key kind of useless because it was after quali, so they were still under Parc Fermé regulations.
Too.
So they couldn't even make like that many changes. I don't know. I complained about all this in the Baku episode, so it's whatever. But
we won't hash it out again. But moving forward to then sprint qualifying.
So sprint qualifying was what you mean the sprint race?
Because
no longer sprint qualifying because it doesn't set the grid for the race.
Well, no, they have sprint qualifying in the morning.
They still call that's what I just talked about though. That's when Hamilton didn't make it in Q1.
Oh yeah,
Russell
my bad.
Q2.
My bad. What was I going to say about it though? Oh crap! If you noticed the fact that they were able to use different compounds of tires, that's different than what happened in Baku. And I was just gonna say that like it made it more fun this time around because of the reason why was because it was wet on the track, so they kind of rescinded the whole rule about tires. And so that's why
I think
our opinions about this weekend's sprint are skewed because this weekend was an exception of the rule. Yeah, like, typically it's not gonna happen. Like this.
I feel like we did talk about during the Baku episode though how we thought that the rule they have for the sprint qualifying, like the tire rule, was kind of pointless and didn't really add much, and if anything, it was just taking away stuff.
It did. Yeah. Remember, Norris couldn't participate.
Yeah, and I think this qualifying session probably showed that. So moving on to the sprint race itself, that was a lot of fun because the entire race, well, not the entire race, the race started out wet. Everyone was on intermediate tires, and it was really intermediate conditions for probably like 80% of the race, but you had a few early gamblers that moved on to the soft tires, and it worked out. For the people who did it early enough, it did work out. Some people did it too late, so they didn't really manage to benefit from him. But my favorite thing really just about that whole race was just how close the racing was. I felt like every single part of the grid, like at the front you had the initial fight between Max and Perez, but then even behind them, like the fight around P4, and then you keep going down like P8. Everyone, there was like groups of cars, and it's usually not just one car, it was like groups of 3 to 4 cars, like really close racing. And I just really loved how there wasn't any drama either. Like it was good, hard racing.
Perez.
Well, okay, I'll get into that. Other than that, though, drivers were very respectable, but it was still hard, fast racing, and that was just really, really entertaining to watch. Honestly,
it was, and it was. I mean, there was a little bit of the pit stop, like about the varying strategy and stuff for the most part. It played less of a role during the like skirmishes. I feel like it wasn't about like, oh, you have fresher tires than I do, and you just let me by.
No,
like, they all had relatively same tires.
There was one part of the race when there was 4 drivers. I don't remember specifically who, but 2 of them were on soft tires. One was on mediums, and the other was on intermediates. But they were all racing each other, and I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah,
I felt like that was the first time I saw something like that watching F1.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and some of the highlights from the sprint race, if you guys didn't get the chance, go watch it on YouTube because it was really great.
Watch the whole thing. Watch the whole thing.
Yeah, it was only 24
laps.
Worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it to watch the whole thing.
But yeah, so the big controversy that happened at the beginning, or sorry, not big controversy, but the only drama that happened.
People want it to be a big controversy.
People wanted to blow it out of proportion, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. So Perez started second for the sprint race, and he challenged Max into turn 1. And then he made it past him in turn 1 and was ahead of him. There was no DRS or anything yet, so they were just hammering it out. And he didn't see Max coming on his right, is what Perez claims. I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what he was intending, but unintentionally, pushed Max to the grass. It didn't hurt Max. Max just backed out, but it could definitely have. I could definitely tell or understand from Max's perspective how that would have felt.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck, man? Yeah. Like, I remember Vettel and Stroll in Brazil last year. That's what it looked like from Max's perspective.
Yeah.
Right? But actually, in actuality, it was just they were on intermediates, and Perez couldn't see through the spray or anything. So,
no, it's crazy to me how like the car behind can even see the car in front of them in the spray.
Yeah.
Like the spray when you're watching it live looks ridiculest.
Which is why a quick thing. That driver in F3 who died in Spa this past weekend. Rest in peace to him, man.
Yeah.
18-year-old from the Netherlands, and I think his name was Daniel something. I forgot. But yeah, we should have had the name. Sorry, but he died in Spa because of this exact scenario we're talking about, where they couldn't see, and he spun in the middle of not Radion, but the straight after Eau Rouge Radion.
Oh, really? He spun out there?
So basically, if you guys remember or know about Spa, Eau Rouge is the S that you go really fast up the hill, but then there's that long straight that comes after it, and you go for a long time and then into a fast right. Well, that kind of famous straight going through like basically the trees, right? It was completely like you couldn't see anything because it was covered in mist because all these drivers are coming up. And he spun out trying to avoid someone, and he was sideways, stuck in the middle of the track, and someone came at full speed.
Wow.
That's why he passed away, and just condolences to that family because just a boy trying to chase his dream. It's unfortunate, but
Stroll talked about him in his post-sprint race interview.
Alonso did too.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that really quick. So Stroll basically in the interview talked about how he was upset about the track layout of Spa, and basically said like, we've said this for years that this is now the second driver in the last like 5 years or 4 years to die at that specific spot. Like he died at the same spot that Antoine Hubert died, and Stroll was blaming the track, but when Alonso talked about it later, Alonso actually said he didn't disagree with Stroll, but he just made his own point that he's like, it's not necessarily about Spa or the track, and he thinks that that's not like a good solution. He was just saying that it was the spray. They have to figure out a way to limit the spray of these cars going through damp conditions, because that's ultimately the most dangerous part, not the layouts. He's like, if you ever wonder why they red flag or a safety car during a rainy scenario, he said the reason why is not because they can't drive in it. It's because they can't see. And it's a safety concern.
I think what we might see in the future, because I feel like also sometimes heavy safety regulations can take time before like they get fully implemented. Like if you think about how long the Halo took before like they added that, we could see like in the next couple of years, they might start to be a lot more strict with the red flags of rain being like, if the track is wet and you need intermediates, yes, you guys can go out and race. But as soon as like there's significant spray, then they just red flag and have to wait for like the rain to stop or the track to dry up. Like
there was that idea of putting the wheel arches. If you remember that, like the
that
wheel
would help with
cover,
spray.
on the back side of the rear tire to prevent that spray, or at least like limit it.
That might be. I like that solution actually. I think that'd be a good idea.
People like Newey would hate it because it would destroy
but
the
like
aerodynamics,
but it's one of those things where, because even when the Halo was gonna get introduced, I'm sure some people were saying like, oh, what if
Toto hated it?
What if it messes with the aero, or like it's like titanium, it definitely makes the car heavier. But it's just one of those things where you just need to take it because it's absolutely necessary.
Unlike the Halo though, it's not about safety. It doesn't need to be structurally sound. Like it just needs, it can't fly off, but basically what they proposed was like a wheel arch, so a cover over the rear of the wheel. So when the spray is shot up from the bottom of the tire as it goes over the track, it's not just flying into the air. It's hitting that buffer and hopefully suppressing a lot of the huge mist blows. So,
and even if it hurts the cars aerodynamically, I say so be it. You're in wet conditions anyway. You're not driving at full speed. Like you'll be okay.
And everyone's gonna have it.
Yeah,
so it's a spec part. So
exactly.
I think it would be fine. Everyone's subtracted a little. So but I guess the point is I do agree with Alonso that they need to do something, and I disagree with Stroll that it's specifically Spa.
No, it really is just kind of. There's a lot of other tracks also that have like a lot of dangerous corners. The sport itself is just dangerous. So
remember Suzuka last year?
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Yeah,
Gasly almost died.
Yeah, no, that was that's a red flag condition.
Like, Alonso's right. That was because of visibility, not the track. Anyway, we kind of got off topic a little bit, but we just wanted to mention that, and condolences to the family once again. Moving on then to now because nothing about the sprint, right? I mean,
actually on the Max and Perez situation, right? One thing I really liked about that, so when I first saw it initially, I thought it was all good because yes, Perez blocked Max and like Max was kind of upset, but then Max also made a mistake going into turn 3.
Way too deep.
Yeah, he went way too deep, and like Perez had to go out wide. And my initial reaction when I saw that, and I was like, oh, Max was mad and like he did that on purpose, just kind of like to shove Perez off, which like he might have, but either way, I would have been okay if he did do that, because of what Perez has done to him earlier. And I think, if both of them got away, no damage, then I'm like, okay, then that was just kind of like very, very hard racing. Maybe it was a bit much, but at least it wasn't one-sided. At least it was equal. But I just remember the commentators were giving Max a lot of forgiveness. They were saying like, oh, he just completely lost control of the car. And I'm like, I don't think he completely lost control. I think he intentionally carried a little more speed through the corner because he wanted to catch back up. But regardless, I thought it was okay. And then especially because both of their post-race interviews and like they both were just honestly pissed off at the media. They were like, yo, guys, let this go. Like we talked about
worked it out.
We're cool. Yeah, it's really not a big deal. But, obviously every single journalist was trying to like, pick their brains about it, trying to get, that highlight reel, that article title or whatever. So
yeah, clickbait. Unfortunately, that's how the F1 media works nowadays. But my opinion, I don't think Max was intending on trying to take Perez out or anything. He was probably feeling a little salty about what happened.
Bro, because it was 2 seconds ago.
So basically what happened is I think it was a mistake, but I don't think Max cared that much that it was a mistake because of what happened. Like he went aggressive into that corner, and he did probably went too deep. It wasn't on purpose, though. It was just
the reason. Also, I don't mind Max doing that too much is because if Perez had blocked him the way that he did, Max would have been alongside him and probably was gonna like get him into turn 3 anyway. So
yes, I agree.
Because the reason like Max literally had to back out because otherwise he was carrying more speed than Perez down that straight. He was gonna be alongside him by the time they hit the corner.
Agreed. Yeah, he would have been alongside at least, or just ahead. Yeah, that would have been the better scenario.
Mhm.
What ended up happening though is that incident caused kind of a chain reaction. So Norris was in third at that point, and because he was following Max, he was following
Where
basically
was
Perez.
Hulkenberg at this point?
Hulkenberg was right next to them. So
Okay.
Hulkenberg was fourth
Mm.
after sprint qualifying or something, or after all the
Yeah.
penalties and stuff.
No, but I thought he had a really good start, and he was
That
up
was what it
to
was.
P3
After
or
the
P2
good
at one
start,
point.
he was
Yeah.
ended up being fourth.
Yeah.
So he was on the inside. Hulkenberg was on the inside, and Norris I think followed Perez on the outside. So when Max carried Perez out of and pushed him off, he
Mhm.
also blocked Norris, Max
Mhm.
coming across like that. And then Norris said that his car went into anti-stall, and I think it was because so that's why if you notice he would look stationary for a couple seconds after at the beginning of turn 3.
Yeah.
So he said that was because his engine was freaking out.
Yeah.
And I think it was because whenever Max came across, he freaked out and probably just misshifted.
Yeah.
And then the car was whoa, and bogged. But whatever the case is, that ruined his sprint race, unfortunately. Norris did a good job and battled afterwards, but he could have gotten a podium during the sprint race.
Well, yes, but I don't think that's necessarily what hurt his final results. From hearing his post-race interview, I really think what the main thing was, he was saying he had really, really good pace at the beginning and he was keeping up, but then at one point his tires just gave out and there was just really anything he could do. I think it's just because to keep up, he was probably pushing pretty hard, and he just got a lot more tire wear than the people in front of him, and so at that point, because also he didn't try switching to the wets. He tried making it to the end with the intermediates, and so by the end they just gave out.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, the team's calculation of him being safe was only a tenth off or something, right? Because they only passed him at the very end on the last lap. So Norris in a post-race interview was like, I don't blame my team for this. They were off by a small amount, and I trust them. I'm sure he does after what happened a couple years ago. But the point is I think it was just a small thing. He had good pace, but I think the combination of environmental factors and the fact that some people gambled and it paid off, it just didn't work out for him.
Rest of the grid, Hamilton had a pretty good recovery drive during the sprint. He didn't make it back in the points though, which is kind of disappointing.
Nobody had
made
fun.
it. Yeah, he made it to P10. He was making a lot of overtakes. Russell was the first person to gamble to put on the softs, and it worked out for him. It definitely took him a couple laps for his tires to get back into temp, but then once they were in the right temperature window, he was setting fastest laps, and he did a pretty good job getting back into the points after he did that.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. But I think that's it from the sprint that I can remember. Go watch it. Yeah, good time.
Yeah,
I love Austria. So we didn't get a chance to talk about it in the preview, but I really like this track. I feel like every year it brings a good race. And during the COVID years, they raced it twice in the same season. And
I honestly think this is the best Austria weekend I've watched, though.
Yes, I
think
think
the sprint definitely helped with that, but even the race, I thought the race was great too.
I would agree with that. Last year was honestly, it was the only thing that was entertaining was the fact that Leclerc won, but honestly he dominated basically the whole race. Well, he passed Max once, but Max was not going to catch up to him. That's what last year. That's really the only entertainment we got. This year, a lot of people were able to fall pretty close. And this is this kind of want to tie into something really quick. This feeds into this whole point that we've been kind of piecing together week after week. That other than the Red Bull, stop complaining that the season is not competitive.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a lot of fun from our perspective. We know what it's like to deal with the Mercedes era. So, make the most of it. Stop whining. You stop whining. Yeah, I'm talking to you.
No, because it's honestly crazy if you think about it, because during the Mercedes era, part of the reason it was boring is because, yes, you just had the Mercedes at the front, but nothing else was happening in the back of the grid because of the way the cars were. You just really couldn't follow. The only thing you'd really get is after, pit stops and someone's fast, maybe someone would get within DRS, but then even then, as soon as they get past, the person behind them, it isn't catching back up because of the dirty air. But, now with this season, one, with how close the grid is, and then because of these new cars being able to follow a lot more closely, we're actually seeing a lot of midfield battles, and that's honestly still really entertaining for me. Yes, we definitely have had some boring races. Wasn't
of course
Miami boring? I forget.
No, Miami was Max's charge from
right
up to first. That was fun to watch. What was a boring
what was the last
race,
super boring race we had?
Oh God. Was Monaco that great? Monaco was good in qualifying. I don't know if the race was that good.
Well, yeah, but Monaco's Monaco.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm really trying to remember. Oh, Canada was just a really big DRS train. There was like a little bit of drama. You had like the Russell crash.
No, but there was some overtaking. Like Norris had a good day overtaking.
Honestly, I can't think of it. No, but see, the fact that I can't think of it like right off the top of my head, I think it's good. That means we have actually had some decent races.
I guess Bahrain was kind of boring.
Yeah.
Remember? It was just Max and Perez up front and just kind of cruising away.
Mm.
And Leclerc had the DNF.
That was the start of the season.
Yeah.
You're asking too much of me. Trying to make me remember that far back.
Anyway, the point is that quit your complaining. And if you want to blame anybody, honestly, like
you blame the engineers for being too good at their jobs. That's really just what it is.
Well, that's you brought up an interesting point. So Aston Martin and Alonso talked about like not together, but they both mentioned the same point of like they were surprised coming into the season that their car was so good relative to the Ferrari and the Mercedes. And they were just like, look, honestly, we met our performance targets. We didn't even set them like super high. Like we set them higher than most teams because of Lawrence, but the truth is that Mercedes and Ferrari just botched it.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do with, Ferrari changing the reins and giving the reins to someone new, and that probably hindered their ability to truly and they lost their guy, their head of car development, who's now going to McLaren at the end of this year.
Wow.
Right? They're about to lose some of their key race engineers, he's not going to be the team principal. It's Lauren Meckies? I forgot his name, but he's going to be the new team principal of AlphaTauri now that now that Tost is gone.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, French toast. My point is, and with Mercedes, they were just cocky. Like they just thought they could.
Mercedes just put way too much. They put all their eggs into one basket and it just didn't work out for them.
They fucked themselves. Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah.
So honestly, like I agree with Aston Martin that the truth is that the Red Bull would have been more challenged. Max would have been more challenged if Ferrari and Mercedes just didn't screw up the winter. And I know that's like, well, that's just natural. But like from what we've expected, especially from Mercedes, that is kind of out of left field.
Yeah.
Two winters in a row, by the way. The first winter being in the winter between 21 and 22, that Mercedes Ferrari didn't botch it, but Mercedes botched it. So I agree with the sentiment that, if you're gonna blame the season, don't blame the season on Red Bull being dominant. Blame the season on these other top three teams.
Other teams not keeping up.
Yeah, and you can blame McLaren
Even though,
too.
yes, the Red Bull car is like very, very good. Like they did get it right. Like,
but they didn't change that much from last year.
Yeah. Well, no, especially when you consider Ferrari technically was going toe to toe with them for at least the first half of last year, and then because they just didn't fix like the issues they needed to fix by the end of the year, that's why Red Bull was then able to run away with it.
Yeah, I mean, from what I remember, the biggest thing that held Ferrari back was the tire wear.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason why was because their car was terrible. It was hard to set up, and the reason why it was hard to set up was because they couldn't like improve it efficiently. It was not a good baseline to build off of, which is what
basically the Mercedes issue too.
Yeah,
they had to give themselves a completely new platform to work on.
At least the Ferrari had good one-lap pace.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The Mercedes didn't have good pace. It didn't have good qualifying pace, not good race pace. Couldn't generate downforce, had terrible drag. It was literally like, the worst possible scenario. I think the only reason why it was like, third was I think because they eventually like they have two good drivers, and
that's crazy to think that they were third. Like with all those problems they had, they were still third.
Yeah. I think it was just their engine was good. I mean, it's the works team for Mercedes, and just that even though their car was bad to those standards, that's still better than these other teams. Blame the teams that got it wrong, not the team that got it right. I don't like this whole thing where like I never blamed Mercedes during that era that like it's their fault that it's uncompetitive. Okay. That's actually a good transition into some news about Lewis Hamilton. This is going to be kind of not a debate between us because we agree, but Lewis said after Friday, I think this weekend, that there should be a rule that the FIA implements that does not allow teams to work on the car for next year until a certain point during the current season. So basically what he's saying is, I don't want Red Bull to work on their car right now for next season, right, when they should be working on just this car for this season. And that they should wait until at least like September or something to start working on the next year's car. Now, let's address several things. the number one elephant in the room is Hamilton a hypocrite?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he
Now, is everyone a hypocrite in F1?
Yes.
Yeah, everyone's a hypocrite in F1.
Yes.
Does Hamilton kind of like always seems to be at the forefront? Yeah, because he's one of the biggest and most prominent voices, and he likes to voice his opinions, right? So you're hearing it from him, but I guarantee you every single fucking driver on the paddock has had that thought cross their mind.
Oh, no, definitely everyone was thinking that about Mercedes, during their dominance.
Even Horner.
They didn't, yeah.
Horner said that in multiple interviews that he's like, well, Jeffrey, I should do something about this shit. This is just how the sport works. So it's not Hamilton specifically.
I know we've both agreed that we don't want to see that implemented now, but I would be open to if they implement that at the start of 2026, because at least 2026 is a fresh slate. And then you put kind of everyone on the same field. I would be okay if they did that, but obviously doing it now, like during this area, no, they absolutely shouldn't, because that very much is you just saying, oh, we need to slow Red Bull down.
Yeah, no, I think you can tell what the actual motivation is. Let me think about what you said about 2026. So
it just sets a new precedent, so that teams then just going into like the new regulations for 2026, they know, okay, let's just focus on this year's car because we're not going to be able to work on next year's for a while anyway.
Yeah,
because the reason you don't want to like start that now is because you have teams that are in different stages of their development, and because we've already had like a season. We're like at the second season with these new regulations. You already have teams like Red Bull that are a lot further ahead, and teams that are further back, than Williams or something like that. But I think when you do it at the start of like a new regulation season, so in 2026, then everyone just starts at zero basically, and then even if a team does get ahead by the end of the season, that they're not going to have a crazy advantage going to the next season because they weren't able to start working on their car earlier than everyone else.
Yeah, I get that. I can't think of anything wrong with that. It sounds pretty sound, but
I have another hypothetical then though.
What's up?
What if, so how you get different wind tunnel time depending on where you finish in the constructors. So, if you finish last, you get a lot more wind tunnel time than everyone else. What if they also made it, if you finish last, you get to start on next year's car earlier?
I like that idea. That does sound better. Because I was going to say, like, some of those smaller teams, like Haas, remember, they just like, fuck it, we're working on next year's car.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't want to deprive teams of doing that, the smaller teams of doing that, because they had such small budgets to work.
And we can see that it works for them also, because when Haas did that worked out for them. They definitely got faster. They're still not...
Unfortunately, they copied, they implemented... They are the only... To put it in perspective, they are the only team still on the grid that hasn't implemented downwashing Red Bull style. I hate that phrase, Red Bull style. I didn't speak into the mic. I hate that phrase, Red Bull style side pods. I know they were the first to do it, but like, listen,
it is what it is.
We're just gonna as a broad concept title, downwashing side pods. Okay, they are the only team not to do it. They still have basically a replica of Ferrari's last year's design of in washing or an out in, where it's just kind of a big tub. And it's a little modified from last year, but overall, basically, because of their affiliation and link with Ferrari and all their parts, they just kind of stuck with that design. And they still have the same issues.
Yeah.
They have the tire wear and all that stuff. So it goes hand in hand. And they, I think, they would be hurt if you did a thing where like all teams couldn't work on the car until September. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you might also, because you can think about how in the same amount of time, if you restrict everyone to the same amount of time, obviously the bigger teams are still going to be able to accomplish more in that amount of time than a smaller team. So maybe it might be worth it to give smaller teams more time.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Actually, I really like that. I would love to see that in 2026. That actually might help a lot.
Submit a proposal.
To the FIA. No, I'm just gonna send them a link to this episode.
I do like that idea. It's growing on me too. But yeah, that was just like we wanted to comment on that. Max, basically called Lewis out as for being a hypocrite, but I don't know. I think Max was just saying what everyone else was thinking, but some people were like, "Oh, Max, because Max said we." And then suddenly people were criticizing him for words that Christian Horner said. And I'm like, God, people read into things way too fucking much. Like, he just said we, okay? And honestly, whatever he says, right? What does it matter? He didn't design the car. I don't know. It's like...
Yeah.
He's a driver. Are you expecting him to not want the best car possible? God, people. Like, lay off Max, honestly.
No, yeah, I do think people need to chill a little bit with how much they complain about, like, the Red Bull dominance.
How they complain, just this whole thing. Like, clearly, most of these people did not experience, like...
No, and that's the thing for me. Like,
dominance.
I experienced the Mercedes dominance. And, well, I guess by the end of the Mercedes dominance, also, I was a Mercedes fan. But, you know, then coming into now and seeing Mercedes not being the dominant team and seeing Red Bull the dominant team, I'm not upset. I still enjoy watching the races. Like... I still respect Red Bull for being able to do what they're doing. Like, it's just, to me, it's just impressive. And I'm literally watching Max just make history before my eyes. Like, This dude might break his record from last year of the most race wins in a season. And that's absolutely ridiculous to think about.
Might do it by, like, well, I mean, he's...
How many race wins does he even have now?
Does he have 6?
What race are we on? This is what?
Oh, my
9?
God, we forgot. We feel like we're so far in.
Yeah.
Perez has 2 victories, right?
Mm.
And so the Max has the
Red
rest.
Bull has still won every single race this season.
And pretty confidently, too. Every race. Whether it's Perez or Max. But look. Those 2 that Perez won, Max like, screwed up or something happened or whatever, right? So he did his job in those scenarios. But I think if you look at the season on average, we've talked about this in multiple episodes before. Max in the Red Bull is the thing that's like being dominant and consistently winning, right? Mm-hmm. If you took Max out of the picture and you put a different driver,
this would be a close championship for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna say it, but even like for Daniel Ricciardo fans out there, if you had Daniel in that car, if you had literally any other driver in that car except maybe Lewis
or Alonso,
maybe Alonso. I'll give him that, but. Other than Lewis and Alonso, no other driver would be doing what Max is doing right now.
That's a bold statement.
As consistent as he's been, as perfect as he's been, the last couple races, ever since Miami, where like he bottled qualifying and then had to recover all the way up to the top, but ever since then,
I thought he had mechanical issues in Miami.
I thought it was he bottled the lap. I thought he
Well, no. The first lap that he set out wasn't good enough, but then couldn't he not set another lap because of mechanical issues?
Happened. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah. But he did.
Yeah, but yeah, he did.
The lap.
He did have a slow.
He still went on to win it. Didn't matter.
Exactly.
But this race, Leclerc finally broke the streak of Max leading every single lap of every single race that has happened since Miami. I think, right. And that's crazy. And I don't think other than Alonso and maybe Lewis would have done the same thing. That's just that's my opinion. You can agree with it or disagree with it. Russell,
I mainly agree with it. No, I don't think Russell.
Leclerc couldn't.
That's the one driver I was gonna say maybe, but I feel like you said consistency, and I was like, okay, maybe Leclerc wouldn't be.
Leclerc probably would have gotten the same amount of poles. Probably would have.
Oh yeah.
But I think during the races, Ferrari. But okay, if he was in the Red Bull, let's say hypothetically. I think he would have made one mistake by now.
Yeah.
Maybe not as many as Paris, but he would have made at least one. We see that with Leclerc. He still has to Leclerc has never truly been in a tight title fight. And the last time we saw
the closest he got was 2022.
And that wasn't a good showing. He did choke a couple times in pretty crucial scenarios.
Yeah.
We can blame Ferrari the livelong day, but it was Leclerc who fucked up in France. And it just,
Might be something about that Ferrari, bro. Because Vettel also, when he was in the Ferrari look, he had a tendency of making mistakes. But
unless your last name is Schumacher or Raikkonen, you don't really do well. And Raikkonen got lucky in 2007. So anyway, we're getting off topic.
Yeah, let's move on to the actual race. So main things to talk about in the race. I thought it was a good race. It wasn't obviously as entertaining, I would say, as a sprint, but I still thought the racing was really good. There was a lot of very good battles.
Top 3 wasn't that entertaining. I think we can make our way from the bottom to the top. So Max pulled out ahead. He had a vacation.
He was chilling
as usual. Sitting in the car, and he was laughing. He was watching the back markers battle. Anyway, the Ferraris were in 2 and 3, and we talk about that for a second. So Leclerc was in second. Carlos was in third. Carlos did look like he had better pace than Leclerc in the opening stages of the race, and he wanted to swap. let's talk about that. We were talking about it before we recorded.
Mm.
So, do you think that they should have swapped?
I do think they should have swapped. So really the kind of turning point was during the VSC because they decided to try to double stack them. And what happened was Charles kind of had a slow stop and that slowed down Sainz.
Yeah.
So Sainz was kind of upset about that. One, because he got slowed down, but also he had wanted to stay out because he felt like he still had life in his tires.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying, he kind of felt like he was stuck behind Charles. And so he wanted to see what his pace would be like if he had clear air. And I agree with him in that. I think it would have been better than if they didn't double stack and instead just bring Charles in during the VSC and let Carlos stay out and see what Carlos can do. Because if Carlos truly had better pace than Charles, then once he pits, he still would have been able to get past Charles again, so it wouldn't have mattered.
100%.
Yeah.
We talked about this before we recorded, and I think that would have worked out a lot better for them because you get kind of a free pass as a team of being like, well, Carlos, we know you're faster, but we don't really want to screw over our number one driver. Oops, did we say that? Sorry, it's true. I mean, like, Sainz is technically ahead of him in the points, but Leclerc is still the better driver overall at different tracks. Anyway, the point is, I agree with Yasar, and I think that's what they should have done when they were handed a freebie on their lap with the VSC. They should have kept Carlos out and been like, all right, man, we leave it to you. You try to make it work. But Leclerc should have gotten the priority of the pit stop because he was ahead. And then you have a win-win, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right?
And because, most of the time also really when you're running in positions like that, it usually is more beneficial to try to do something else with your second driver because it just gives you like hope of like trying to pull something out. Yeah. I do think though, regardless of what they did, I don't think they would have been able to keep the like 2 and 3, P2 and 3. I still think Perez would have been able to steal away that last podium position regardless.
Fair. And clearly Sainz couldn't keep it on the track, so that didn't, that hurt too. We'll talk about that a little bit. But overall, I think Ferrari, other than that small mistake, we have to give them credit for the fact that they actually did pretty good this weekend. They got
I thought
second and fourth.
I thought they did fantastic this weekend.
We're gonna give them team of the week.
Hold on, we'll get to that. We'll get to that at the end. We'll get to that at the end.
My opinion is that they kind of were underrated, and I think they finally, for the first time, you could confidently say they were the second fastest car. You couldn't say that about a lot of other races.
No, you couldn't. I definitely wouldn't have said it. Yeah.
I mean, maybe Canada. Maybe you could.
No, this is the one weekend so far this season where they were for sure the second fastest
car
yes.
during the race.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
And clearly Leclerc and Sainz were above the midfield cars. Like, sorry. Alonso in the Aston Martin and like the Mercedes are not midfield, but they are like right. Yeah. The Ferraris
best of everyone except for Red Bull.
Yeah, I think they were smack dab in the middle of the Red Bulls level and the McLaren, Aston Martin, and Mercedes, the newly McLaren level.
So then, right behind them, you had Norris, who had an amazing weekend. He was really just running in P5 like most of the race. He had a decent start, I think, but most of the time, I think he was really just trying to manage the position he had. He had a couple
Hamilton
fights.
passed him in the beginning.
Yeah, and then he got back past Hamilton.
Eventually, when Hamilton locked up, but I think actually Norris has a bad habit of having great qualifying and then bottling it in like the first lap or something. It's something I've kind of always been irritated. Like I love Lando. Okay, you can't see it, but behind the camera, I have a shirt for Lando Norris from Silverstone in 2021. But he really sucks at the opening lap. I don't know. He just always seems to get overtaken, and all the hard work just goes down the drain from qualifying. Yeah. Anyway, the point is Hamilton passed him, but like eventually the McLaren had better race pace, and especially in Lando Norris's hands than the Mercedes, and also Lewis was dealing with all those issues. Yeah. But yeah, those two were battling it out. That was fun. Sainz eventually also got caught up in that fight with Norris. That was fun to watch.
I'm out of a picture of them. This is a different.
This is a different one.
This is lap 20.
This is later. What is this one? This is after they've pit, right? Leclerc and Hamilton have pit.
Oh wait, this is sprint race. Yeah, people aren't intermediates. My bad.
We're experiencing technical difficulties here.
I was also from the sprint. My bad.
I'm gonna put
I only
up the
have pictures
correct
from the
pictures
sprint
right now. Boom, the correct pictures in post, and basically just. That was really fun. Some of the best battles. Sainz had a good race. I think the penalties that he occurred later on, we'll talk about that. But overall, I think Sainz had a good showing this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked like he didn't sound like he had fun, but it kind of looked fun. It kind of looked like he had a fun time trying to keep Perez behind at one point, trying to beat Hamilton, trying to beat Norris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of looked like he was working hard this weekend in a good way. Below them, what was it?
Then you had you had Alonso manage to get past both Mercedes, and then behind him was the two Mercedes.
Alonso didn't get past Hamilton on merit, though. He got past him on penalties.
Well, I'm talking in terms of...
He did. Never mind. He did get past on merit. Like, technically. So Hamilton had to serve the 5-second penalty during the pit stop, and so Alonso got ahead because of that. And I would call that merit.
Yeah, that's true.
So he did get ahead. Alonso, good job.
Yeah.
You weren't quite as fast as the McLaren, but...
Alonso was kind of quiet the whole race.
Mm-hmm.
Both Russell for sure was super quiet the whole race. I really feel like I don't remember hearing much from him.
Stroll qualified ahead of Alonso by one place and then was gone. Like I don't.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember what happened to him specifically. I think maybe he, because he also tried a 2-stop, right?
Yeah. So the first thing that happened is he bottled the start, not the initial start, the launch, but up in turn 1. He dove inside where there was no gap, so he didn't lock up.
Yeah, he had to back out, and then Alonso just went around the outside, and then that's how Alonso got past him, and then at that point Alonso was gone. But then Stroll continued to fall down the order, though, and I don't really know why. I really think he was just getting overtaken, just didn't really have the race pace.
Austria's a fun track because I feel like taking the inside isn't always like a stamp guarantee you've sealed the deal.
Yeah.
Taking the outside of Austria, there's plenty of room, can help you because it's like it's kind of a faster corner turned straight, fast downhill turn, and so you can take the outside and actually come out on top a lot of times. And I like that about that track because then you have good battles.
For sure.
It's not just who's going to get the outside. What happened there is clearly like Stroll just did not have a good line and then lost all the momentum.
Yeah, he finished P13.
Yeah, because he tried a radical 2-stop strategy or 3-stop. I think he tried a 3-stop.
He tried a 3-stop.
Because most people did a 2-stop. Like, Norris and Hamilton, all them did a 2-stop.
Technically, Max did too because he hit it in the last lap.
I guess he
Wait, can I talk
did.
about that real quick? I
Sure.
loved watching that. Because Max was ahead in the lead by like 23, 24 seconds, right? And he goes on the radio and he was saying, and he was like asking him like, oh, should we pit? And then they were saying, so it's like there was technically enough of a gap because I think you only lose 20 seconds like during the pit stop. But it was a real show of force that they did that, though. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. I think people could take it the wrong way as like, oh, they're flexing. I don't see it as they're flexing. I see it as, oh, this is like that winning mentality that you need to have because and it's so funny to me also because Perez had had the fastest lap, and Max was like, no, I want it. And I love that Max trusted the team enough to do it because you're essentially taking a risk. There's 2 laps left. Like if he had a slow pit stop, that would have been it. Leclerc would have been passed, and maybe he would fight Leclerc on the last lap, but
he wouldn't have had enough time.
Yeah, I don't think he would have had enough time. So for Max to like be able to trust his team and trust his crew to give him a good pit stop, and then also for his team to like trust him to be able to push on the last lap to get the fastest lap, I just thought it was great. And it's just I love the mentality they have, and it was amazing to watch. Honestly,
I don't disagree with you, but the funny thing is I had a different view entirely.
Really?
I was like, oh, Max is bored. Seriously, I watched it. I was like, oh, he's bored. All right, cool.
No, but I don't even necessarily see it as him. Like, obviously, yes, he was bored. He had a boring ass race, but still, for him to like have the confidence to 100%. Say, "Yo, let me go for the fastest lap."
I mean, what it sounded like to me during the radio call was like, "Yo, get my tires ready," and the team was like, do we have to? He's like, I'm coming in right now if the tires aren't ready.
They showed the pit crew, and even the commentators mentioned it. Like, the pit crew was ready to go. They all had their helmets on. They were waiting for him to come in for that pit stop. So, yeah.
I would agree that it was a show of force. It was just Max is him right now.
Yeah.
He's just
but it's just I like it, and that's kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about still enjoying it, even though like seeing Red Bull dominant. Like, I'll be honest, sometimes situations like that, it's kind of cool when a team is dominant enough to do that. Like, I know Mercedes used to do that when they were winning too, and so I'm not upset to see it, is what I'm saying.
Max just he knew that Perez had that fastest lap, and he's like, I want it. That's the mentality. Yeah,
exactly.
Yep. Okay, so we kind of skipped ahead at the end there, but I mean, during the middle part of the race, the only thing that was really occurring was track limits. So during Hamilton and Norris's battle, Hamilton was struggling to keep it within the lines, and as much as
Perez
you can have
ahead of them too. At one point, he got ahead of them.
Towards the end, right?
Yeah. Oh wait, yeah, that's the second half. No,
Yeah,
keep going,
no,
keep
you're
going.
good. Like
Yeah.
just the first piece of like drama that happened
Mhm.
was like during the Hamilton Norris fight, the FIA started to like get those. Basically, they had like sensors in the track to make it their job easier
Mhm.
to sense when a car went over the track limits. And I mean, Norris was seeing like as he was fighting Hamilton, it was behind him. He's like, dude, this guy like went off the track like 4 fucking times.
Yeah.
And once he said that, then the FIA actually started to dish out penalties. It makes me think that like they were getting the cues, but they were kind of like taking their time with it.
Mhm.
And then as soon as he mentioned that, they were
Well,
like,
yeah, because
oh.
then all the drivers started complaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Norris did that on Hamilton, then Hamilton started to do the same thing for whoever was in front of him, which honestly, fair game.
People then started like bashing Norris a little because they were like, well, you went over track limits too. But the thing is, he never got a penalty, and apparently he was only
Yeah,
detected
it was
3
like-
times of going over the limit. And people were like, oh, I swear to God, I saw him going over more than once. And it's like, the whole point is like they're trying to defend Hamilton or like try to bash Norris for being like a hypocrite. But I feel like that's not really the point. Like they knew about these track limits, and we talked about this beforehand. Hamilton, dude, I understand the car's not doing well. There's a very simple solution to stay within the
Bro,
track limits. If you can't keep the car in the lines, slow down.
It's the whole porpoising thing again from
Yes.
2022 when
Exactly.
when everyone was just saying, well, then change your fucking car,
Yeah.
bro, and they were like, no.
Christian, change your fucking car. Right?
Yeah.
And Toto's like, well, you change your car because Checo kept... Yeah, no, it's basically this shit again. I don't... And, you know, Hamilton, there's a lot of, like, you know, people are saying, oh, Crimilton, you know, that kind of thing. Like, he sounded like he was whining on the radio about, like, well, if I got penalized, then... And, look, I think it's totally reasonable for a driver to be like that. Like, yo, okay, if I got penalized, is everyone else getting penalized too?
For sure.
And that's what it was. He was just stressed and having a tough time in the car, and his voice just sounds
And,
like
at
that.
that point, he had a 5-second penalty too, so it was like
Hamilton's voice is just like that.
Yeah.
It's just kind of
no, Hamilton's voice it really
just kind of
is like that,
sounds
yeah.
whiny.
Yeah,
But no. Yeah, I don't think he was like being some sort of baby. He was acting normal,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
But in case people are curious, like from the sensors that are detecting people going off the track, I read an article that said throughout the whole race they got 1,200 notifications. Yeah, bro,
1,200?
No, so the article I read, I'm pretty sure the
Yo.
FIA was just straight up saying like, "Yo, we did not look at every single last sensor warning we were getting because we got 1,200 of them." So like after the race ended, there was a lot of people where they came back afterwards and still gave them like more time penalties. I think during the race, I only knew about people getting 5-second ones, but a couple people got like another 5 seconds, so like 10 seconds total by the end of the race. So the final grid kind of like moved around a little bit, but that's ridiculous to think about 1,200. Also, if you're curious like why that's happening, they had changed the track limits for Austria. I believe it was starting in 2021. Because I feel like there was a little bit of drama about it in the 2021 race, but my point of view on the whole thing is just yes, it didn't used to be like that, but they changed it and it's been like that for 3 years now, and they give you guys warnings, you know. So I really think it is 100% up to the drivers, like just keep it within the white lines, bro. And it's because it's not like it's impossible. Like I know it's a really fast corner, like you carry so much speed
9
through
and
that
10.
section.
He's
Yeah,
talking about corners 9 and 10.
Yeah, 9 and 10. So yes, but you guys are F1 drivers. If you can drive Monaco at like full speed, I think you'll be okay keeping it in the white lines in Austria.
Yeah. It's literally just you just have to go slower. Like Norris mentioned in his qualifying lap that he could have done better, but he kind of messed up a little bit in the final sector 9 and 10 because he wanted to stay within the track limits. Like that's what happens. And so he was perfectly fine compromising that lap and getting P4, right? Instead of, you know,
risking
it,
like pulling a Perez. Yeah.
He was like lap time deletion or losing a couple tenths. Whatever, man. I don't care. Like, I'd rather take the latter. And I think that's what you just have to do.
Yeah.
And the proof of this is the fact that there were some drivers who never got any warning, never got any like.
Well, actually, from the article I was reading, it seemed like. So not everyone got like a 5-second penalty because you have to. So you get 2 warnings and then you get a black and white flag, and then after that.
I thought. Oh, okay.
No, yeah, it's definitely 2 warnings.
Is it?
Yeah, and then you get a black and white flag, and then after the black and white flag, that's when you get a penalty. So I think there's only 2 drivers on the whole grid that like never got a warning. But yes, there was some people that like got warnings but never got the 5-second penalty. Like, I think Norris got warnings, but never got the penalty.
He definitely got warnings.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of like Alonso or Leclerc, who like I don't remember them ever getting even like a warning. So, or formal warning. Maybe they were. It was like cued that like they did do it with the track sensors, but they never got told that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Other big losers kind of during the race. Piastri got damaged.
Yeah.
Like on the first lap or something like that. So his race kind of got ruined. Also, we kind of briefly touched on it earlier, but his car didn't have the upgrades. So definitely, I'm not gonna like have anything on him for not having the same amount of race pace as Norris. Because this time they actually straight up don't have the same car.
Yeah, they straight up don't have the same car.
Sonoda looked like he was going to have a good race, but I remember I think it was lap 1 or sometime at the start of the race he got shoved wide and like went through the gravel, and I think he was never able to fully recover from that.
The thing was it was because like so he didn't go in for the VSC, so then he ended up being 10th. But then he's on a completely like weird fucked strategy.
Yeah. I think he only did a one stop though, but I think even that like he wasn't able to make it back up.
Not great. I think he had better pace than De Vries this weekend, but De Vries ended up out on top. Well, and then Sonoda had like 10 seconds worth of penalties at the end or something, right? So it just not a great weekend for AlphaTauri. Not a great weekend for Haas either. Hülkenberg did great during the sprint until the tires like became an issue, and then he
dropped back. Was he able to stay within the points?
He was
able to hold on to a P8, right?
Yeah, once they switched the tires. But it was like he retired during the race, which is where the good points are, and they really just didn't have great like pace in general overall. It took dynamic racing, wet conditions for him to show any pace. And Magnussen was nowhere.
Yeah, Magnussen got hit with a 5-second penalty too, I'm pretty sure.
But yeah, getting into like our ratings for the weekend. So I gave Norris best driver.
I agree with that.
McLaren.
I agree with that.
I gave McLaren best team. I know you're going to probably say Ferrari.
Yeah.
I gave McLaren best team because Piastri had some issues, but he didn't have the upgrades. And the whole point of this weekend really for McLaren was, were these upgrades worth it? We talked about hacking and hyping him up and be like, yo, they're going to be on the same pace as the Red Bull. No,
especially with what you were saying earlier about this only being like the first half of essentially like the full package that they're trying to get ready. Yeah. I definitely do have high hopes for them.
Hakkinen wasn't exactly wrong. I mean, during qualifying, he went toe-to-toe and was within a tenth of Max in some of those sessions. That's a big deal. And I know it's Norris's strongest track, but there's more upgrades coming, and Austria is kind of a good indication of like the good pace of the car.
And this was also his first race with those upgrades. Yeah.
It balances out, right?
With like less practice sessions too and everything.
So I want to give my props to my team. Great job.
No, for sure. I agree with that. But so I gave it to Ferrari just because I thought I just thought their pace the entire weekend was just phenomenal. Maybe yes, it could have been like a bit stronger in qualifying, but I think them like being able to start the race in like 2 and 3, and for most of the race it looked like they were gonna hold on to that 2 and 3. I know yes, they lost the one podium position to Perez, but I thought they just had a fantastic race pace. I thought like Sainz's battle that he had with Perez was really good, really good, because also him fighting with Perez for as long as he did is also what helps Perez have absolutely like no hope of being able to catch up to Leclerc.
Right.
And I know maybe they didn't have the most optimal strategy because they messed up the double stack. That was the one mistake they made, but I thought other than that they had a really great weekend, and I just think it's something that they should be like very happy and proud about.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we talked
especially
about
for us, like be able to say at least like this race they were confidently the second best team, and then also them breaking Red Bull's or Max's streak of laps led. I think that's really impressive because I would not have thought that Ferrari was going to be the team that broke that streak.
I had a feeling it would be. I mean, their car on a good day is the second fastest. I think the Aston Martin.
But I don't think that's that. But I feel like that's not consistent because it still seems like it's like select. Yeah, maybe it's specific tracks will be the second fastest, but I think
most of the average pace graphs that I've seen from quali and like and the races looking at lap times and percentage of pace. Usually the Ferrari has been consistently number 2 in terms of. Because I was
at least just for me, just from all the races we've seen. Well, mainly also because like the amount of podiums that Alonso has gotten, I was just always on the wave of. On average, the Aston Martin is probably the second fastest, but even then, not by like a big margin whatsoever. Like I know it's very, very close, but I still would have given it to the Aston Martins, apart from this weekend, of course. But
Gotcha. Okay. Who did you have as worst driver? This was a tough one, by the way.
Worst driver really didn't know because there was also a lot of people that got moved around because of penalties. I was thinking Ocon for one because Ocon finished 14th or 13th. So I think that was kind of disappointing because it seemed like they were showing like they had decent pace at one point. We could also give it to Stroll because Stroll, bro, you out qualified Alonso and then you bottled the weekend.
We always give it to Stroll.
Yeah, we could always give it to
DeVries
Stroll.
did.
DeVries technically finished that. I'm
Sunday?
not going to give it to DeVries simply because he at least finished ahead of Sino.
Yeah, but there's a couple times during the sprint and stuff where he locked up in certain areas and was not doing.
No,
good
yeah, he was fighting with
and
Magnussen, basically shoved Magnussen off the track.
That's right. Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. Oh, Magnussen again. It was just like.
Yeah.
Oh
No,
my
yeah,
God,
Magnussen
so
came on the radio. He was
pissed.
like, "Yo, what the fuck was that?" Dude?
Is that DeVries again? I think he
Yeah.
even said is that
Yeah.
is it fucking DeVries again? And I can imagine for someone like Magnussen, it's just like, bro, what the hell, man? And
I don't know. I guess I'll just I'll give it to Ocon just because he
Me too.
finished outside the points.
I give it to Ocon too. I think for it's we talked about this kind of at the beginning of the season, but Ocon has a point to prove with Gasly. Ocon has to beat Gasly convincingly this season. Because if he doesn't, then what the hell?
No, I don't think it needs to be convincingly.
I think so.
I think he needs to beat him, but I don't think it needs to be by a large margin. I don't think it needs to be
convincingly doesn't necessarily mean a large margin. I meant just without a doubt, it was from merit that he beat him, not from weird circumstances.
Because you're worried that if he doesn't, then Gasly will be the new number one, and they'll think about dropping him,
or that Ocon isn't what he's snuffed up to be. That you have a newcomer coming in who's never been on the team who beats you when you've been established at this team for several years.
Yeah, but Gasly isn't necessarily a newcomer to the grid, and they know Gasly's good.
The point that Ocon should be trying to prove is that he's better than Gasly. How the hell is that proof if he comes in on this new team? Gasly is good, but if the whole point is Ocon trying to prove that he's better,
yeah,
and then
that's what
Ocon
I mean
is
by
trying to prove that he deserves a seat at a top team.
That's what I mean by I think yes, obviously his goal should be to be Gasly. That's just a given, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be anything because I think regardless, as long as he's also at the bare minimum matching Gasly, I would feel that Alpine would just see it as, okay, we have a very strong driver pairing. We have two consistent drivers that are similar in pace, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think they would be considering dropping Ocon or prioritizing Gasly more if that was the case.
I'm going to somewhat disagree, just because, and once again, when I meant convincingly, I didn't mean by 50 points. I meant that disregarding any sort of if Gasly had a whole bunch of reliability issue, right?
Oh,
that's not merit, right?
Yeah,
but if they both had relatively the same amount of issues, if they both were held had roughly the same amount of race starts and race completions and stuff, and then Ocon consistently qualified ahead or finished ahead in the race or had better pace, had better points, right? Then that's beating him on merit and convincingly he did it totally. He beat Gasly without a shadow of a doubt. Not like a Norris Ricciardo scenario. He doesn't need to do that.
No, obviously, yeah, I know he doesn't need to know that, but that's just where I still kind of disagree with you with. I think it's okay if it's not necessarily Ocon was better. It's more just their level.
Alpine doesn't seem like the most mature team. That's also too is my opinion. All this shit that's been happening.
I mean,
with
after
them.
the Piastri shit.
Not just that, their whole CEO being just because they had one bad race in Australia that he was trying to give up on the team. He's like, oh, this team is out. This doesn't represent us. Okay, and the dude sounded like a coward. Basically, he sounded like he was getting flack from his board of directors or some crap, and I hate that shit. It's have some faith in your team.
Speaking
please.
of the Alpine board, just brief news if people don't know, Ryan Reynolds,
and Michael B. Jordan, and I forgot his name.
And Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
I didn't know Michael B. Jordan was in the deal. That's cool.
So
their group or whatever they are, they bought a 24% stake in the Alpine F1 racing team. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. So it basically Reynolds led a coalition of actors. So there's a whole bunch of them. We're probably missing a bunch of names. The other big actor, though, there's two guys at the head of it. Him and the actor from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I forgot his name.
Yeah, I don't know his name. I don't know his name.
My friend Steven's going to kill me. But anyway, he and Reynolds were the face of it, but then some prominent names in it were Michael B. Jordan. I don't know what percentage
I'm surprised Tom Cruise wasn't in that, or maybe no. Brad Pitt's the one doing the movie, right?
Yeah, Brad Pitt's doing the one of the movie.
I feel like that would have been cool if Brad Pitt
that's
in
it.
on that too.
Maybe Cruise just spent way too much money on this new movie.
Bro, he's Tom Cruise. He has
I know.
money.
It's funny. Cruise is a Mercedes guy.
Like if any actor was gonna do it, it would have been
Cruise is a Mercedes guy. Though,
but maybe he doesn't have. Yeah, but maybe he doesn't have a situation right now where he can buy into the Mercedes team.
Or maybe they are interested.
Yeah, or they aren't interested. Well, yeah, I mean, Toto's
the only reason why
40% is $1 billion now. So
the only reason why this happened, by the way, is because Alpine was interested in selling a part of their team. Then they have been for quite some time.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, you know, these actors stepped in, and it's fun. It's kind of, I think when it gets to Las Vegas, you know they're gonna be there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm mainly just I was just really impressed with Ryan Reynolds because he's just been making a lot of this is getting really off topic, but I'm gonna talk about it anyway. He's just he's made a lot of very good like business decisions outside of being an actor because I don't know if he
owns a gin.
I'm pretty sure he owns Mint Mobile, doesn't he? I'm pretty sure he
Mint Mobile?
Created and founded Mint Mobile. I might be wrong about that, but he for sure like is in all the commercials, and I know for sure owns like a very, very large stake. But I think he started it. But then he also owns a English football team.
He does.
That's also been very successful. So then now
they won the
seeing him, they won the championship.
And it's not Premier League, but it's a different.
Yeah, they're like on their way moving up. They're not in Premier League yet, but I think they potentially could be soon. But
he does have an aviation gin too.
Yeah. So it's cool seeing him now get into F1.
Yeah.
So.
I agree. I think more of them should, and I think now that F1's really stepping into this kind of more prominent light, you'll see that.
He's for sure going to help with like F1 marketing in the US.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. He's definitely going to be in commercials and stuff, or being like, you know, their launches, and they're going to use him like Red Bull uses Ricardo, right?
Yeah.
just be the guy. Anyway, yeah, I thought that was a cool fact. But was there anything else we missed?
AlphaTauri news. So
the last thing.
It does seem kind of set in stone that De Vries is leaving either for sure by the end of the season, but possibly mid-season. There's just rumors been going around. I really don't know how many concrete decisions are actually in, but there's definitely talks of Liam Lawson. He's an F2 driver right now, replacing Nick De Vries mid-season. And then obviously there's still Ricardo rumors floating around. Me and Kimo both think though, if Ricardo was going to come in, they would bring Ricardo in at the end of the season, not mid-season. But if they were going to bring Lawson in, they might do it mid-season. They might, because Kimo thinks AlphaTauri is kind of ruthless, so they could do something of where they bring Lawson
Red Bull
in.
In general, yeah.
Yeah, they bring Lawson in for half a season and see how he does. And if he's good, they keep him. And if he's not that good, then they bring in Ricardo or someone else. So we'll see.
Give him the best cards on the table. It's ruthless, but
it definitely does seem like, regardless of what happens, De Vries is not going to be here next year.
No, that's what it looks like. It's just, you wouldn't make these sort of comments that Helmut Marko was saying. Oh, sorry, I guess we didn't mention that. We didn't talk about that. But Helmut Marko basically said, like, hey, you know, when we brought him in, Horner didn't really want him. You don't make those kind of comments on someone you want to keep around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if the whole point of keeping him at AlphaTauri is like, you know, the whole point is like they eventually are supposed to get up to Red Bull. I don't know if you would mention that if you had any intention of keeping him within the Red Bull family.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a smart business decision, though Marco does make some comments that make me question that as well.
No,
so,
he does. Marco definitely talks a lot. He talks a lot.
He's got that old man thing, really. He just talks way too much. But anyway, the other big thing about AlphaTauri is that he announced, like, oh, hey, yeah, we're completely stripping the name. We're completely rebranding, new colors, new branding, they have a new team principal. So they're kind of doing this whole, new sponsors too, whole new thing. They're still going to be in the same factory, but I think they're going to implement more. He said, to the very brink of the regulations, they are going to copy Red Bull as much as possible. That's basically what he said.
Red Bull's what?
He said that they're going to bring the teams closer together to the absolute like word of the regulations. So within the regulations, he's going basically to carry as much stuff over from Red Bull as possible. And in order to do that,
in terms of car development and everything.
Yes. Now, in my opinion, in order to do that, you have to move them from Italy. So maybe they will in the next couple of years. Maybe before 2026, they'll move them over. Because if you're using Red Bull powertrains, right, and you're trying to implement more of the sister team, the parent team, you have to bring them closer together. It is way inefficient, especially with the cost cap, to do that.
I'm really not a fan of that, though. Because I think we've talked before of where, like, I'm okay with it being, you know, technically the Red Bull Junior team, but it's okay because it still feels like it's a different team and still kind of does its own thing. If it does become basically a second Red Bull, I think that would just...
I agree.
It it was just kind of annoying. I also think teams for sure are definitely going to complain about that because it feels like Red Bull, has more of an advantage because it's like it's basically like them having 4 cars instead of 2.
Well, they can't ever they won't ever be on the same pace as Red Bull. That's not going to happen because they within the regulations, Red Bull will still get the best.
Well, they'd never let that happen also because that would just be horrible for Red Bull's image.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So it's going to be more. It's going to be closer now to a Toro Rosso situation than it is what AlphaTauri has been these past couple of years. And eventually, I think the goal is probably to get them back up to the place they were in 2021, where that car was good, wasn't amazing, but it was good.
Yeah.
And Gasly at times made
like
really
you could score points. Yes.
Oh yeah, consistent points. Right. They want that again. Okay. So let's say theoretically they turn it around in the next couple of years. That is an intense midfield to drop yourself into. Right. I mean, honestly, like, okay, well, let's rank the teams for fun. This last thing before we close out. No, let's based not on the drivers, based on the pace purely of the car, average pace of what we can speculate. Obviously, we don't have the numbers. Clearly, Red Bull number 1. I will put the list here. By the way, I'll do some cool things in post. We'll have Red Bull at the top. Number 2 in terms of average pace, I think it's the Ferrari with their new upgrades. With these upgrades that they've had since Spain. It's now Montreal.
Okay, yeah. When you say since Spain.
Okay, well,
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
No, okay. Maybe. Actually, hold on.
Because
Montreal, Alonso was quicker, and so was Hamilton. I forgot about that.
Okay, but just Aston Martin was slow in Spain.
They were terrible,
and they were slow today.
It feels like wherever Mercedes is strongest, Aston Martin actually struggles the most, and Ferrari's something in the middle.
That's why for me, I would usually go.
Because as much as I
want to go
like
Aston
Stroll,
Martin, Ferrari, Mercedes.
As much as I don't like Stroll, you do have to take that into account, right? Like it could just be Alonso being Alonso in that car.
Like you think Alonso is getting a lot more out of that car than it actually deserves.
Even though we put the Red Bull up top, we make this point every time that if you take Max out, Perez really isn't dominant.
Yeah.
So you have to think about that with the Aston Martin too. If you just look at Aston Martin and you just look at Alonso and Stroll, maybe it's the fact that Alonso is just that good.
But I feel like some of the he's had at least a couple performances where I feel like he was still like confidently faster than Hamilton behind in the Mercedes.
On average throughout the season, though, can we confidently say that they're the second fastest car? And you know what? And even though I just challenged that, I'm going to say yes. But that is, take this with a grain of salt. Like, we don't know for sure. And the fact that we can't tell is an indication it's competitive this year. Anyway,
that's true.
So we'll put Aston Martin second. I think they have great tire wear. I think they have great aero efficiency. There's some really clever things with their tubs that are great, and they were basically one of the pioneers of it. So I would put them there. Third fastest would probably be the Ferrari in terms of consistency.
I'm really not sure about that, but I'll go with you for now. Yeah, we'll go Ferrari then Mercedes.
It's tough to say. I think Hamilton's really good in Montreal. I think that kind of... Well, Russell was doing pretty good too. We need a couple more races to truly make the decision. Yeah. Let's call it a draw. Let's put Ferrari and Mercedes 3 and 4, and we'll just say they're so close. I mean, they're just like that. Okay. Yeah. After that, I would put the McLaren at 5.
Now, yes.
At 5.
With these upgrades, yes. I do think so. Yeah, because I think
they're ahead of the Alpine for sure.
Yes, obviously Lando was very strong at this track. He loves this track, but I think even from at least just from the pace we were seeing today, it seems like they're going to be able to continue this. And Piastri also, once he gets the upgrades, should be able to be like in that same ballpark too.
Silverstone's going to be fun because Mercedes is bringing upgrades too next week. Yeah, we only have to wait a week.
Yeah, bro. Silverstone is definitely going to be a break. Silverstone.
The Ferraris are great at Silverstone. McLaren's good at Silverstone.
Hamilton is good at Silverstone.
Hamilton's good at so is Russell.
Yeah,
and it's home race for Mercedes, even though they're a German team. They're really a British team.
Well, yeah, they have 2 British drivers too.
And they're based in Britain.
Yeah.
Milton Keynes, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no, that's Red Bull. Stevenage is where Hamilton's from. Fuck, I forgot this.
No, but the Mercedes factory is in Britain too, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the town.
Oh, I don't remember the town.
And my British man. But yeah, like Red Bull's based in Milton Keynes. Aston Martin's based like at Silverstone.
Yeah. That's like a true home Grand Prix for Aston Martin.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so McLaren and then Alpine. This is where it gets tough.
I'm going to say the McLarens and Alpines, I think maybe might be closer than we'll realize. Like maybe we'll go to another track where the Alpines will be a bit stronger, so it might be kind of close. But I do agree for now, yeah, I'll put McLaren.
They're in their own
Alpine.
little like small group, especially if you look at the points too. Like Red Bull's at the very top. You have that battle for second with those three teams. And then you have Alpine and McLaren kind of like there in kind of like a little duo.
Yeah.
Until McLaren's car gets good enough where they consistently challenge those teams, we can't move them up a level. And then... But I feel like they are separated from the rest of the teams we're about to mention, right?
Yeah.
But this is where I don't know. So Williams, I'm tempted to put at the top of that field.
I low-key would probably put the Williams up there. Bro, because the Williams...
In Albon's hands. Sargent's a rookie.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. The Williams in Albon's hands, I feel like I would put up there.
The dude's been getting close to the top 10 or the top 10.
No,
like,
yeah, and like the amount of
races.
Q3 appearances he's had, it's I think for sure the Williams is up there.
With their upgrades, I think the Williams are the top of that bracket.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it gets tough though.
Between AlphaTauri, Haas, Alfa Romeo.
Because the Haas is great in qualifying, but then it sucks during the race. Like it's really not good. I don't think
that to me brings down its overall rating a lot.
I think
like if you can't keep up in the race, then what's the
because
point?
I think Hulkenberg's a great driver, clearly.
Yeah.
But the car sucks. So we were talking about cars and not the drivers, right? Then I think the Haas is actually towards the bottom
because of the lack of race pace.
Yeah, you have two really good drivers.
And yes, they have good qualifying pace, but they have still had a couple qualities this season.
Monaco was terrible. Yeah.
So you will go. Is it Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Haas?
That's the thing I'm trying to think. Like, do you really think Bottas is worse than Yuki? Right? On average, Yuki has finished ahead of Bottas in AlphaTauri. So that makes me think like if you can officially say that Yuki is better than Bottas, then the case is rested, right? And that the AlphaTauri is not as good as, or that you could say the AlphaTauri is worse than the Alfa Romeo. But,
actually, yeah, you're right then. Right? You're right. Yeah, the AlphaTauri is not worse than the Alfa Romeo. Yeah. So, but
right?
then
it's a tough call.
But is the Alfa Romeo still better than the Haas?
I think so. Tough call.
That's a tough call.
Joe's been doing actually good enough where I would make that. I would say that, and they don't have tire wear issues. I think they're just not fast.
Okay, so we're going AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo.
Once again, it's interchangeable, of course.
Yeah. No, yeah, that bottom two is definitely for sure close.
Have we missed any teams? No, we didn't.
I feel like we're forgetting.
Right? Okay, wait. Red Bull, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Mercedes, McLaren, Alpine, Alphas, both Alphas, right?
No. Williams after both Alphas.
Yes, I'm just listing off of the teams though.
Yeah.
Haas.
So Williams, Haas.
Are we missing one more?
No, yeah, because you didn't say Williams.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, so we got all the time. Haas is at the bottom. I mean, you can interchange those bottom three all you want. It doesn't really change much. The point is that's kind of where we've ranked the cars thus far.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see these upgrades how they shape up. You think we'll leave for this. I don't think we're gonna be able to do a Silverstone preview this week before the race happens.
Maybe.
Okay, we'll let you guys know.
But I don't have work on Monday and Tuesday.
But basically, I think just a small preview of it is just we're really damn excited, and you should check it out. Find a way to watch Silverstone. I mean, last year it was the best race of the season.
Yeah,
it was so much fun. And the thing is what we hope happens is what happened last year was that Max had damage and like he couldn't race very well.
I don't think that's gonna happen, but I think we're still gonna get an incredibly entertaining midfield ballad.
I hope Max just like does not have a good weekend, retires or some crap, goes on a vacation or watches along with us because the race was so much fun without him participating. Towards the end, it was so much fun, and Sainz got his maiden victory. Yeah. So we'll catch you all next time. Then.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to drop a like if you're watching this on
Let us know
YouTube.
your thoughts, about what we've talked about, and thanks for checking out.
All right. Peace.